Hi guys, Steve Powell and Louise from Powell UK. So the purpose of this short session is to give you 3 specific exercises that we would currently use in our exercise library with some tweaks that you can make with a client to give them a better response possibly, or just give them a little bit of variety. And I'm going to give you 2 additional exercises that are my personal favourites to look at mobilising the whole body and also taking advantage of the stimulus that the vibration gives us in the preparatory part of the session. So before we get into the exercises, I just want to talk a little bit about this concept of mobilizers, because what we're looking to do is add a very subtle degree of movement into what may typically seem to be a static stretch. So we're not necessarily looking for a massive amount of movement, we're just looking to get extensibility in the soft tissue, the connective tissue and the fascia, but what it also starts to do is to get the client to focus on rhythmical, almost subconscious movement. So the first exercise we're going to go through is a single leg hamstring stretch. So we'd set up as we would do typically. The most important thing we're looking for is to get tension into the hamstring, and we know that when we get tension, the stimulus of vibration and the tonic vibration reflex gives us that increase in circulation and neural input we're looking for. All we're going to do, we're make a slight tweak with the arms, and we're just going to start by using the arms, a frontal plane tweak, using the arms to drive movement from side to side. So what you'll see is Louise demonstrating is a very subtle, very rhythmical movement with constant tension in the hamstring, and you'll see the hips are very slightly shifting in the frontal plane, but the arms are driving the movement, which frees up and starts to increase extensibility in the lateral medial hamstring as we're moving from side to side. Excellent. Okay. So the next stretch is going to be moving into the anterior hip. So again, we're going to set up as a traditional hip flexor stretch. The most important thing is that, as Lou's demonstrating, we get a nice extensibility through the anterior part of the hip, and we use both arms overhead to open up the anterior aspect of the body. All we're going to get Lou to do now is to just drive the front knee forward and the arms reach overhead, just so we start to get a very subtle, very rhythmical movement, and almost what we're trying to do is separate the femur from the pelvis. So it's not a big motion, it's subtle, it's subconscious, and it's rhythmical, aiming to get extensibility into the front of the hip, the psoas muscle, and the whole entire anterior hip complex. An exercise that's really important for a lot of people that spend a lot of time sat down at work or in the car to get released into the anterior chain. Perfect. So the next exercise I'm going to put the mat on for is the 90-90 glute stretch. So again, the most important setup of this exercise is the hips are square and facing the plate. Once Lou's in position, all I'm going to ask her to do is to take her right arm, actively lean forward and just reach towards my hand here, so that actually what we're getting is a rhythmical movement. So we actively work the hip on the plate, and the opposite arm drives movement across the body. And if we look at this from a myofascial lines perspective, we're starting to load the back functional line, so glute to opposite lat. And again, the arm is the driver to increase extensibility through the whole of that back functional line. To reiterate, rhythmical, subtle movements, not big ranges. So a tweak there for the 90-90 stretch. So that's the 3 particular exercises that we modify from the exercise library. The next 2 are really looking more globally at myofascial lines and really integrating mobility for the whole body. So, all I'm going to get Lou to do is take a split stance, left foot forward, and just to make sure that, again, her weight is centered in the middle so that she's balanced. All I'm going to get asked to do is take the opposite arm and just drive down towards the knee, and then open out and extend through the anterior aspects of the body. So I'm just going to let Lou do that a couple of times because it's quite a complex movement. So what we're looking for is a loading to the hip as we drive down towards the knee, and an opening as she drives over the right shoulder, and you'll also notice that the eyes are following the line of the hands. So as we come in, we're loading the posterior chain, and as we open out, the anterior chain. If we talk about that from myofascial lines, we've got coming in, the spiral line, the back functional line, and as we open out, the front functional line. So totally a whole body mobility exercise for the ankle, hip and thoracic, and also some key myofascial lines. The last exercise really is going to target the lateral line in terms of myofascial continuities, but the IT band and the hip, some key areas that are often very tight and immobile in lots of our clients. And if we free the hips up, the powerhouse of the body, we get a much better range of motion. So, Lou's planted with one foot, the big toe stays down, and all you'll see is she's using her opposite arm for support, using the foot to drive the hip in the frontal plane, and the opposite arm overhead to drive her into lateral flexion. So again, rhythmical movement, it's a subtle range, and you'll see that what we're getting is right from the ankle complex through the hip into the thoracic spine, is total body mobility in the lateral aspects of the body. So that completes the session. So that was 3 exercises modified from the banner, introducing the concept of mobilizers, and then 2 take-home exercises for whole body mobility. Hope that helps.